Oxidized wine. Sounds like something you'd pour straight down the drain, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like that half-empty glass from last night you forgot about.
But here's the unexpected twist. We're actually diving deep today into the fascinating, often misunderstood world of intentionally oxidative wines.
That's the key word, isn't it? Intentional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to really pull back the curtain on controlled oxidation. We want to reveal how this deliberate process creates some of the most complex, long-lived, and truly unique wines on Earth. Think of it as your shortcut, to appreciating a style that completely defies those normal expectations.
And to do that, well, we've sifted through a mountain of information, everything from the intricate biochemical transformations happening right there in a barrel,
Wow.
to centuries-old winemaking traditions, and even some of the exciting modern innovations that are happening right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this paradox then.
Yeah.
How can oxidation, the very thing that spoils an ordinary wine, also be responsible for the greatest expressions in another? What's actually going on behind the scenes?
It really comes down to precise chemistry and, crucially, control. You can almost imagine it like a slow, controlled dance.
Okay.
Oxygen is guided by these natural catalysts already present in the wine, and it gradually transforms the wine's components. We're talking about things like alcohol, sugars, and especially those phenolic compounds.
Oh, the tannins and color combination.
Exactly, tannins, anthocyanins. This gradual interaction fundamentally rebuilds the wine's character, creating completely new flavors and textures. It's a transformation.
So it's not just a simple chemical reaction, it's more like a cascade, really, that changes the wine's very essence.
That's a good way to put it.
And it seems oxygen plays two very different roles here. You mentioned this concept of microoxygenation, which sounds like the good guy in this story.
Exactly. Microoxygenation is definitely the hero here. It's all about slow, controlled exposure.
Right.
Often, this happens naturally when wine ages in oak barrels simply because wood is porous.
Okay, makes sense.
And this delicate, continuous presence of oxygen promotes several beneficial changes. A really major one is the polymerization of tannins.
Polymerization, so they link up.
They link together, yeah, which softens their texture. It makes the wine feel much smoother, less astringent in your mouth.
Ah, okay.
And this gradual oxygen exposure is also absolutely crucial for developing those incredible tertiary aromas.
That's the really complex stuff.
Yes. Think warm spices, rich tobacco, supple leather, sometimes even coffee or toasted notes. And in red wines, it helps stabilize their color over the long haul.
That sounds incredibly intricate.
Yeah.
But what happens when that control is lost? When does oxygen, our good guy, turn into the bad guy?
Well, that's when you get excessive, uncontrolled, and crucially rapid exposure to oxygen.
Okay, so speed is a factor.
A huge factor. It quickly degrades those delicate primary fruit aromas. They're essentially just obliterated.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It also leads to the formation of undesirable volatile compounds. For instance, too much acetaldehyde can give the wine an unpleasant oxidized apple note.
Right, I've heard that description.
Or even a vinegar-like note in wines not intended for that profile. That indicates a clear fault.
Definitely not what you want unless you're making vinegar.
Exactly. And you'll also notice a loss of vibrant color. It often turns a dull brownish or just an unappealing hue. It's a very, very fine line the winemaker is walking.
It really sounds like an expert winemaker is walking a tightrope here. So, assuming you've successfully navigated that tightrope, how does this controlled oxidation actually manifest itself? Visually, aromatically, what transformation can we expect in the glass?
Visually, it's like watching a story unfold over time. For white oxidative wines, the color might start pale, then journey through this intense gold, moving to a vibrant amber.
Oh, yeah.
And in the most aged examples, it can deepen into a really rich mahogany brown.
And for reds, like a tawny port.
Right. For something like a tawny port, those vibrant ruby tones you see in a young port give way to more orange, brick, and brown nuances, especially at the rim.
And it's not a bad thing here.
Not at all. It's a beautiful visual testament to the wine's intentional evolution and the complexity it's developed over time.
Okay, got the visuals and the aromas.
Yeah.
I imagine we're moving far, far beyond just fresh fruit notes here.
Oh, absolutely. You're entering a whole new aromatic world, a deep, complex spectrum that evolves significantly.
Like what? Give us some examples.
You get those really distinct notes like almond, walnut, hazelnut. These come from specific compounds formed during that oxidative aging.
Nutty notes. Okay.
Then there's rich coffee, warm caramel, toffee. various kinds of honey notes, sometimes even specific ones like heather honey, and often a subtle hint of smoke.
Complex.
And you might also discover exotic spices. Think curry, saffron, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger. There's a key compound called sotalon responsible for some of those.
Sotalon. Interesting.
And that lovely candied orange peel note often emerges too, a sweet caramelized citrus character.
Those descriptions are incredible. You hear terms like almond, coffee, spices, but there's also that more enigmatic one, rancio. It almost sounds like a fault.
It does, doesn't it?
Can you clarify what rancio truly means in this context?
That's a really great point because it can be confusing. Rancio isn't a fault here. It's a specific, highly desired, complex profile that develops from prolonged noble oxidation.
Okay, so prolonged is key.
Yes. It's a term that really encompasses those beautifully integrated notes of nuts, coffee, and dried fruits. It signals a wine that has undergone significant intentional aging and transformation. It's actually a hallmark of oxidative mastery.
That's such a crucial distinction. Okay, so it's not just about what you smell or see. How does this controlled oxidation actually feel on the palate? What flavors and textures should we expect?
On the palate, you experience this remarkable increase in complexity and depth. There's often a beautiful balance.
Balance is key in wine.
Always. Here, you often get concentrated sweetness, especially in dessert styles, but it's masterfully countered by vibrant acidity.
Ah, the acidity keeps it fresh.
Absolutely crucial. It provides balance, prevents any cloyingness, and is essential for longevity. And you often find the subtle, intriguing bitterness like nut skin, roasted almond, maybe coffee grounds that adds depth.
And texture, does that change too?
Dramatically. You'll often experience an almost unctuous, oily, rich coating sensation.
Unctuosity.
Exactly, unctuosity. It comes from those transformed, polymerized tannins in the concentrated dry extract. It gives the wine a truly luxurious mouthfeel.
Wow.
And in sweeter styles, like a PX sherry, it can be quite viscous, almost syrupy, just gliding across the palate.
And the longevity. We hear these wines can age almost indefinitely. Is there truth to that?
There really is. They can last an incredible amount of time.
Yeah.
You have to remember, these wines are essentially pre-aged by design.
Right through that controlled oxidation.
Precisely. That process stabilizes them remarkably, allowing them to age gracefully for decades, sometimes even centuries.
Countries.
Seriously. And what's even more fascinating is that many of these robust wines continue to evolve and reveal new layers of complexity even after the bottle has been opened, assuming you store them properly.
That's amazing. Unlike most wines.
It's a unique hallmark of oxidative wines, that resilience.
It's incredible to hear how these traditions have evolved. So it really is about the winemaker playing a long game here, almost like a conductor with an orchestra guiding these transformations.
That's a perfect analogy.
What are the key elements they're orchestrating to shape this final oxidative profile?
Well, you hit on a crucial point. It is an orchestration. And the grape variety itself is a critical starting point.
Certain grapes are better suited.
Definitely. Some specific varieties are just naturally more predisposed to this process because of their inherent composition. Think Palomino Fino in Jerez, Savagnin in Jura, Cercial in Madeira, Touriga Nacional in Port.
What makes them suitable?
It's often their unique phenolic makeup, the tannins and other compounds, and their natural acidity levels. These are key to their ability to withstand and actually transform through oxidation, rather than just degrade.
Okay, so the grape matters.
Yeah.
And terroir, does that play a role?
Absolutely. Terroir plays a significant role. Elements like climate and soil influence how the grape matures. For instance, those famous white, porous Albariza soils in Jerez,
Right, the chalky one.
or the blue marl soils in the Jura, they're known to influence the grape's resilience and their capacity for this kind of oxidative aging.
So the raw materials are important. Then we get into the winemaking techniques themselves, which must be incredibly precise for this style.
Oh, incredibly precise. Techniques right from the start, like grape maturation and drying, are vital. Methods like a passamento in Italy.
Where they dry the grapes.
Exactly. Drying grapes on mats for passito wines, that concentrates sugars and flavors before fermentation even begins.
Clever.
And fermentation itself has its role. Specific yeasts, like the famous Flaw in sherry or voile in Jura, are fundamental.
We'll definitely need to talk more about Flaw.
Oh, yes. And sometimes a winemaker might use deliberate, slightly more loose oxygen control during fermentation to actually kickstart the oxidative process, kind of preparing the wine for its long journey ahead.
And then the core of it all, the oxidative aging itself. This must be where the real magic happens, right?
Indeed. This is where the wine truly develops its unique character. It involves careful choices about the aging vessels.
Like barrels.
Typically old wooden casks. Their porosity allows for that slow, controlled microoxygenation we talked about.
Micro-oxygenation again.
And importantly, these old casks allow for the angel's share evaporation, concentrating the wine without imparting overwhelming new wood flavors.
Ah, so you don't want fresh oak notes.
Generally not for these styles. You also see things like glass demijohns or bonbons being used, especially for rancio styles in France, where they might even be left out in the sun.
In the sun. Wow.
Yes, it promotes a more intense, almost cooked kind of oxidation.
Yeah.
And crucially, there's the technique of partial filling.
Leaving airspace, ullage.
Exactly, ullage or headspace. Intentionally leaving airspace in the barrel, like you see in Oloroso Sherry or Vin Jaune, this significantly accelerates the oxidation.
So deliberate exposure.
Very deliberate. Even the cellar conditions matter, high or fluctuating temperatures, like in Madeira's Cantero system where barrels age in attics.
In the heat?
Yes, or the humidity levels. All these can accelerate or moderate the oxidation rate. It's all part of the winemaker's toolkit.
And fortification, adding grape spirit, that plays a part too, doesn't it? Where does that fit in?
Absolutely. Fortification is key in styles like Port, Jerez, or Madeira. Adding grape spirit does a couple of things. First, it stops fermentation.
Which keeps the sweetness, if desired.
Precisely, preserving residual sugar. But critically, it also influences the type of oxidation that happens. For example, a higher alcohol content can inhibit the growth of floor yeast.
Ah, so that leads to styles like Oloroso.
Exactly. It pushes the wine towards a purely oxidative aging path without the biological influence of Flaw. It's another really important lever the winemaker can pull.
It really sounds like the winemaker, or perhaps the enologist, is truly the maestro of this entire symphony. They're making just a multitude of critical decisions from the vineyard right through to the bottle.
That's exactly right. The impenologist is the maestro here. They're making critical decisions constantly. Vineyard selection, harvest timing, fermentation management, choosing those aging vessels, meticulously controlling cellar conditions.
It's a lot to manage.
And finally, deciding the absolute perfect moment for bottling to ensure the wine expresses exactly the intended oxidative profile. It's definitely an art and a science, all rolled into one.
Okay, let's embark on a bit of a grand tour then, hitting some of these iconic oxidative wines. Where better to start than with Jerez or Sherry from Spain? It feels like the quintessential example, doesn't it?
It really is. Jerez, down in Andalusia, is incredibly diverse and complex. You've got that unique terroir, especially the white, porous Albariza soil we mentioned, which is fundamental.
The grapes.
Primarily Palomino Fino for the dry styles, and then Pedro Ximénez, PX, and Moscatel for the sweet wines.
Right.
And a defining element, certainly for many styles, is the Solera system, that intricate pyramid of barrels.
Can you quickly explain how that works?
Sure, it's a system for fractional blending. Wine is drawn from the bottom row of oldest barrels, the Solera, for bottling. Then those barrels are replenished with wine from the row above, the Criadera, and so on, with the youngest wine entering the top row.
So it's a continuous blend of ages.
Exactly. It ensures consistency year after year, and it's absolutely crucial for nourishing the Flaw in the styles that use it.
Okay, let's talk about Flaw. It sounds fascinating, almost like a living, breathing component of the wine, more biological than just chemical oxidation.
It truly is. Flaw is this natural protective veil of specific yeast, Saccharomyces bacillus and related species that form spontaneously on the surface of the wine inside the barrel.
A yeast blanket.
Sort of, yeah. It does two things. It shields the wine from excessive direct contact with oxygen, and it biologically transforms the wine by consuming certain compounds and producing others.
Creating unique flavors.
Absolutely. It contributes incredibly unique notes. Think that toasted almonds, sometimes chamomile, a distinctive saline freshness, even a sort of bready character. This is absolutely key for styles like Fino and Manzanilla.
Manzanilla, that's the one from the coast, right?
Yes, specifically from Sanlúcar de Barrameda. It gets an even more distinct, salty, tangy, fresh character, likely due to the coastal humidity influencing its particular Flaw development.
Fascinating. Then there are the purely oxidative styles where the Flaw isn't involved or maybe disappears.
Right. Those include Oloroso. It's fortified to a higher level initially, which prevents Flaw from forming, so it ages directly with oxygen from the start. It becomes full-bodied, nutty, powerful. Then you have Amontillado, which is really interesting. It begins its life aging under Flaw, like a Fino.
So it starts biologically.
But then, for various reasons, the Flaw dies off or is intentionally killed off by further fortification, and the wine finishes its aging oxidatively. So it gets this incredible complexity, combining Flaw notes with oxidative notes like hazelnut and tobacco.
Best of both worlds.
In a way, yes. And then there's Palo Cortado, often considered the most enigmatic and rare. It typically starts like a Fino, intended for biological aging, but something happens, the Flaw unexpectedly dies off or behaves unusually.
Mystery wine.
Pretty much. Winemakers then fortify it further and age it oxidatively like an Oloroso. The result is often described as having the aromatic finesse of an Amontillado or Fino, but the body and richness of an Oloroso.
Wow, and the sweet ones. PX.
Ooh, Pedro Jimenez, or PX. This uses intensely sun-dried grapes, almost raisins, which concentrates the sugars massively. The resulting wines are incredibly dense, dark, almost black, and syrupy, with powerful notes of figs, raisins, dates, coffee, molasses, pure decadence.
Sounds intense. Okay, next stop. Let's journey north to the Jura region in France for what's affectionately known as the Golden Treasure. Vengeance.
Vengeance, yes.
Yeah.
A very different expression, but equally fascinating. Here, the key elements are the specific blue marl soils and the Sauvignon grape variety.
Sauvignon, not Sauvignon Blanc.
Correct, Sauvignon. It's known for its high acidity and very distinct aromatic profile, which lends itself perfectly to this style.
And they have their own version of Flaw.
They do. It's called the voile, which means veil in French. It's a similar type of yeast veil that forms on the wine surface during aging.
And the aging is long, right?
Extremely long and legally mandated. A minimum of 6 years and 3 months aging sous voile under the veil in oak barrels, crucially, with no topping up.
No topping up, so evaporation is significant.
Hugely significant. That loss, the partisans or angel's share, can be 30% or even more of the wine's volume, but this process intensely concentrates the wine. Patience is truly a virtue, or rather a requirement.
Wow, 30% loss. And its unique profile. I've heard it described as quite singular, maybe even challenging for some.
It is unmistakable. You get this intense golden color. The aromas are complex. Nuts, definitely, but often very specific notes of curry.
Curry, really?
Yes, that soda-lon compound again. Also, bruised or dried green apples, sometimes smoky or spicy notes too. It's savory, complex, and incredibly long on the palate.
And the classic pairing.
The absolute classic, iconic pairing is with Comté cheese, another regional specialty from the Jura. They have this incredible natural affinity. It's almost magical. Also great with chicken in creamy, mushroomy sauces.
Sounds delicious. Okay, moving south again to Portugal for port wine, specifically the tawny and colheita styles. How do these fit into the oxidative category? We often think of vintage port first.
That's a key distinction. It's important to separate these oxidative styles from the reductive styles like ruby or especially vintage port.
Reductive meaning aged without much oxygen.
Exactly. Vintage port ages primarily in the bottle with minimal oxygen exposure, developing very differently. Tawny and colheita ports, on the other hand, are all about slow aging in casks.
So oxygen plays a big role.
A huge role through gradual oxidation via the wood and also concentration through evaporation again, that angel's share. Tawnies are blends of different vintages aged in wood, labeled typically as 10, 20, 30, or 40 years old, indicating the average age profile. Colheitas are single vintage tawnies.
And the sensory profile changes dramatically from a ruby or vintage port.
Completely. They develop that appealing amber-brown color, sometimes with olive green hints at the rim in very old examples. Aromatically and on the palate, you get notes of dried fruits like figs and raisins, rich caramel, toffee, baking spices, nuts like almonds and walnuts, maybe coffee or chocolate notes, all with a much smoother, softer, more integrated palate than their younger, fruitier counterparts.
Sounds lovely. And then there's Madeira, the other Portuguese island gem, the eternal wine. That name alone suggests incredible longevity.
It really does, and it lives up to it. Madeira's history is captivating. The wine was famously almost accidentally cooked during long sea voyages through the tropics centuries ago. The heat and movement were found to dramatically improve the wine.
So they started doing it on purpose.
Exactly. This led to the development of two unique heating and aging methods on the island itself. There's estufagem, which is a quicker, controlled heating process in tanks, often used for younger, more commercial styles.
And the other method?
The other, more traditional and higher quality method is cantiro. Here, the casks are aged naturally in the warm attics of the lodges, sometimes for decades, even centuries. The gentle, prolonged heat allows for a slower, more profound transformation and integration.
Centuries.
Right, does it?
And the grapes determine the style.
Yes, the traditional noble grape varieties determine the sweetness levels and overall style. Surcial is the driest, very high acidity, nutty. Verdelho is medium dry, smokier notes. Boule is medium sweet, richer notes of caramel and dried fruit. And Malvasia, often called Malmsey in English, is the sweetest, very rich, complex, toffee, vanilla notes.
So a style for everyone. And the longevity.
Truly remarkable. Due to the heating process, which simulates that long aging, and the high acidity, these wines are incredibly stable. They can last for centuries, literally. And like some other oxidative wines, they can often remain in good condition for a very long time, even after opening the bottle. They are practically indestructible.
It's just mind-boggling how long some of these wines can endure. Beyond these really iconic names, Jerez, Jura, Porto, Madeira, are there other notable oxidative wines out there worth exploring?
Oh, absolutely. The world of oxidative wine is broader than just those four. You have, for example, Passito wines from Italy.
We mentioned Appassimento earlier.
Exactly, using that method of drying grapes on mats. A famous example is Vinsanto from Tuscany, traditionally made from Trebbiano and Malvasia grapes, dried and then fermented and aged for years, often for a very long time, in small barrels called caratelli. This prolonged aging imparts significant oxidative character.
Okay, Vinsanto. What else?
Then there are the Rancio wines, particularly from southern France, like Roussillon. These are often intentionally exposed to sun and air, sometimes in glass demijohns, bonbons, to develop a very specific, intense, nutty, almost roasted or cooked oxidative character. The Rancio profile we discussed earlier.
A more rustic style, perhaps.
Can be, yes. Very traditional, very intense. And even looking further east, in Hungary, you find Tokaji Samorodni Seco. While Tokaj is famous for its sweet azug wines, the dry Samorodni is fermented under a veil of yeast, similar to Flaw or Voile.
Another yeast veil wine.
Exactly, giving it a distinctly nutty, sherry-like oxidative profile alongside its Tokaji minerality.
It's incredible to hear how these diverse traditions have evolved. So given all this deep history in Europe, is the rest of the wine world starting to, well, catch on to oxidative styles beyond their traditional homes? Are we seeing this elsewhere?
We definitely are. It's really interesting to see. Australia, for instance, has a long, albeit sometimes overlooked tradition of producing fortified wines, particularly in regions like Rutherglen. They make styles historically called Topak, formerly Tokay, made from muscadel and muscat.
How are they made?
Often using modified Solera systems in very old casks, sometimes aging for decades, developing incredible oxidative complexity, notes of cold tea, caramel, butterscotch, nuts, really world-class examples.
Australia, what about the U.S.?
In the United States, while maybe on a smaller scale, there's definitely growing interest. You see small productions inspired by Madeira and sherry-like styles, often from adventurous winemakers experimenting. Plus, producers are exploring innovations in oxidative dessert wines, perhaps not strictly following European models, but taking inspiration.
And elsewhere.
In Greece, you have Vinsanto from Santorini. While different from Italian Vinsanto, it's made from sun-dried Assyrtiko and other grapes and sees prolonged barrel aging, which imparts significant oxidative notes of nuts and dried fruits alongside its volcanic intensity.
Wow.
And interestingly, even some aged Retsina, the traditional Greek resonated wine, can develop subtle oxidative characteristics over time that add another layer to its piney profile. So yes, the conversation and experimentation are definitely becoming more global.
Okay, so you've decided to explore these incredible wines. You've got your bottle of sherry or Madeira or Vin Jaune. How do you serve them to really get the most out of the experience? Are there specific temperatures or glasses we should consider?
Yes, serving correctly can make a big difference. Temperature is absolutely key, and it really depends on the specific style.
Makes sense.
For the lighter, drier styles, think Jerez Fino or Manzanilla or a Surcial Madeira, you want to serve them cooler, somewhere between, say, 8 to 12 degrees Celsius or about 46 to 54 Fahrenheit.
Why cooler?
Serving them chilled really highlights their crisp acidity, their freshness, and those delicate almond and saline notes. It keeps them vibrant.
Okay. And for the richer, sweeter ones, like a tawny port or a PX sherry?
For those richer, sweeter, often darker wines, a tawny port, a Buell or Malmsey Madeira, a PX sherry, you want them slightly warmer, but still cool, not room temperature, generally somewhere between 14 and 18 degrees Celsius. maybe 57 to 64 Fahrenheit.
And the reason for that?
Serving them slightly warmer allows their complex aromas of dried fruits, spices, caramel, and nuts to really open up and express themselves fully without the alcohol becoming too sharp or prominent, which can happen if they're too warm.
Got it. What about glasses? Does glassware matter much here?
It does help. While a standard medium-sized white wine glass will certainly work fine.
Go to all-rounder.
Exactly. But specific, smaller, fortified wine glasses, sometimes called sherry glasses or port glasses, are often ideal. Their shape, usually a bit smaller and sometimes more tapered, really helps to concentrate the intense and complex aromas directly towards your nose, enhancing the experience.
Makes sense for such aromatic wines. Now, what about decantation? We often hear about decanting older red wines. Is that something we need to do with these oxidative wines?
That's a good question. Generally, for the vast majority of oxidative wines, decanting is not needed or even desirable.
Why not?
Because, as we've discussed, they've already been exposed to oxygen in a controlled way during their long aging process. They're already open, aromatically speaking.
So they don't need more air.
Exactly. Additional aeration from decanting usually won't benefit them and might even cause some of their more delicate, volatile aromas to dissipate too quickly. However, there are important exceptions.
Oh, okay. Which ones?
Very old wines, particularly vintage Madeira or very old tawny ports that have spent many decades or even centuries maturing in the bottle after their time in cask, might develop a natural sediment over time.
Like old red wines.
Precisely. In those specific, often rare cases, careful decantation is recommended. But the goal there is purely to separate the clear liquid from any solid deposits at the bottom of the bottle.
Not to aerate the wine.
Correct, just to ensure you get a clean pour and a pleasant experience visually and texturally. So decant only if you see sediment, and do it gently just before serving.
That's a really useful clarification. Okay, let's talk food. The gastronomic versatility of these wines seems just incredible. They appear to pair with an astonishing breadth of dishes. Let's start with some of the more classic pairings people might know.
Sure, the classics are classics for a reason. For dry jas fino or manzanilla, think classic Spanish tapas olives, almonds, cured ham like jamón ibérico, fresh seafood, especially fried fish or shrimp. The saltiness and acidity cut through beautifully.
Perfect match. Visual.
We mentioned it, Conte cheese is the absolute benchmark. Also fantastic with chicken or veal and creamy mushroom sauces or dishes featuring walnuts or curry spices.
Right, playing on its own notes. Bordatani.
Tawny port is wonderful with nuts, almonds, walnuts, pecans, and desserts based on them, like pecan pie. Also great with creme brulee, caramel desserts, or medium-strong blue cheeses like Stilton.
Stilton and port.
Yeah.
Classic Christmas pairing.
A classic indeed. And Madeira, depending on its sweetness level, has a huge range.
Give us some examples.
Surchel or Verdelho, the drier ones, can be amazing with savory dishes like clear soups or consommes, maybe even foie gras. Boal or Malmsey, the sweeter ones, are brilliant with richer meats, game birds, strong cheeses, and especially chocolate or coffee-based desserts. They have the acidity to handle richness.
Those are fantastic starting points. But this is where it gets really exciting for me. Where can these wines truly shine in more unexpected ways? Beyond the classics, what kind of global cuisines or maybe bold, unusual pairings could we explore?
That's where the fun really begins. Their inherent complexity, that mix of nutty, savory, sometimes sweet and acidic elements, allows for some truly bold and fascinating pairings.
Like what? Push the boat out.
Okay, consider something like a Thai green curry. An off-dry Amontillado sherry or maybe a Verdelho Madeira could potentially complement the earthy spices and aromatic herbs, while the acidity cuts through the richness of the coconut milk.
Interesting. Asian food seems promising.
Very promising. Dishes with soy sauce like teriyaki salmon or glazed pork belly. The umami and slightly sweet notes in the food can resonate beautifully with the umami-rich and subtly oxidative notes of certain sherries like Oloroso or Palo Cortado.
Okay, I can see that. What about spicier cuisines?
Robust Indian curries, particularly those with nuts or lentils, could find a fascinating balance with a richer Amontillado or even a dry Oloroso sherry. The nutty notes complement, the body stands up to the spice.
And maybe Mexican.
Absolutely. Imagine a complex, smoky tortilla soup paired with an Amontillado, or rich roasted meat tacos like carnitas with a nutty Oloroso. The possibilities really open up when you think outside the European box.
That opens up so many possibilities, and it makes me think about the underlying principles of food and wine pairing. You often hear about pairing based on contrast or complementarity. How do those apply specifically with these oxidative wines?
They are absolutely key principles here. Contrast is often about using the wine's acidity.
Like cutting through richness.
Exactly. Think of that crisp, dry Fino sherry slicing through the oiliness of fried fish or calamari. The high acidity cleanses the palate, making you ready for the next bite. A dry Surcial Madeira could do the same with a rich pâté.
Okay, that's contrast. What about complementarity?
Complementarity is about matching flavors. You're looking for elements in the wine that echo elements in the food.
Finding resonance.
Precisely. Pairing the wine's inherent nutty notes, almond, walnut, with dishes featuring nuts. Matching the caramel or toffee notes in a tawny port or a bull madeira with caramel-based desserts or dishes with caramelized onions. Echoing the dried fruit character, figs, raisins, in a PX sherry with fruitcake or sticky toffee pudding. Pairing the spicy notes in some vin jaune or amontillado with subtly spiced dishes.
So you're building bridges between the wine and food.
You are, and there's another element too, umami. Many oxidative wines, particularly sherries aged under Flaw or those with significant age, develop a distinct savory umami character.
Savory taste.
Yes, and this umami quality pairs incredibly well with umami-rich foods like mushrooms, aged cheeses, cured meats, soy sauce, roasted tomatoes. It creates this amazing synergy of flavors that's really quite remarkable and unique to these wines.
Okay, despite all this incredible history, complexity, and versatility, what are some of the biggest hurdles these wines face in the modern market? What's preventing more people from discovering and embracing them?
Probably the biggest and most persistent challenge is battling that fundamental consumer misconception we touched on right at the start.
The idea that oxidized just means spoiled.
Exactly. That word oxidized is automatically associated with a wine fault, with something old, stale, or gone bad. Education is absolutely key here.
It's a communication challenge.
A huge one. Shifting the narrative requires a proactive approach, explaining that this is controlled, intentional oxidation. Reframing it as sophisticated, intentionally complex, masterfully crafted, rather than just old. It's about teaching a different kind of appreciation.
And it sounds like the production itself isn't exactly straightforward either. There must be challenges there too.
Oh, indeed. Production is fraught with difficulties. Climate change, for one, is a growing concern.
How does that impact these wines?
It can affect grape ripening, potentially altering the crucial balance of sugars and acidity needed for these styles.
Yeah.
It can also impact cellar conditions. Temperature and humidity fluctuations can disrupt the delicate management needed, especially for active yeasts like Flaw or Voile.
Managing those yeasts must be tricky.
Incredibly precise work. Flaw and Voile require very specific conditions, temperature, humidity, alcohol level, oxygen availability, to thrive correctly and protect the wine while imparting their unique character. It's a delicate ecosystem that's easily disturbed.
And the yields, are they typically low?
Yes, inherently low yields are another challenge. This comes partly from grape dehydration in methods like appassimento for pesito wines.
Where the grapes lose water weight?
Right. And significantly from that angel's share evaporation during the often decades-long oxidative aging process in cask. You simply end up with less wine to sell after all that time and effort.
That makes sense. And what about sustainability? That's a huge topic across all agriculture, including winemaking. How does that impact these very traditional styles?
It's becoming a very real focus, even in these deeply traditional regions. There's a growing emphasis on ecological practices in both the vineyards and the cellars.
Like what sort of practices?
Things like adopting organic and biodynamic farming methods, improving water management efficiency in often dry regions, reducing carbon footprints in production and transport, preserving biodiversity. Sustainability isn't just a trend, it's becoming essential for ensuring the long-term health and resilience of these unique winemaking landscapes and traditions, especially in the face of environmental changes.
So how do we bridge this gap? How do we bring these incredible, historic, complex wines to new generations of wine lovers who might be intimidated or just unaware? It feels like there's a huge opportunity there if the perception barrier can be overcome.
There really is, and there's a clear need to creatively market these wines, making them feel more accessible, less stuffy perhaps, and more attractive to a broader, younger audience.
Are producers innovating?
Yes, and that's what's exciting. We're seeing innovation alongside tradition. Some producers are experimenting with using different or perhaps less traditional grape varieties. Others are exploring lower fortification levels in some styles, maybe aiming for wines that feel a bit lighter or are easier to pair.
Interesting.
There's also the push towards organic and biodynamic practices, which resonates with many younger consumers, and a growing focus on highlighting single vineyards or specific pagos in Jerez, for example, to showcase unique terroirs, much like in Burgundy or Barolo.
Telling a more specific story.
Exactly, and even things like modernizing bottle shapes and label designs, trying to break away from solely traditional perceptions and catch the eye of someone who might not otherwise pick up a bottle of sherry or Madeira. It's about blending respect for tradition with a necessary dose of forward thinking.
Well, we've certainly taken a deep dive today into the extraordinary world of oxidative wines. We've hopefully revealed them not as accents or faults, but as true masterpieces, born from this incredibly controlled, patient dance with oxygen and time.
It's a fascinating world, isn't it? So much history and complexity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, maybe the next time you see a bottle of sherry or Vinjuan, Portotani, or Madeira on a shelf or a menu, don't just see a wine.
See the story behind it.
Exactly. See a story that might be hundreds of years in the making. See an intentional work of art, a liquid testament to patience, to transformation, to the winemaker's skill, and maybe consider this thought. If the most common simple elements, just grape, time, and the air we breathe, can combine under careful guidance to create such profound, complex, and enduring beauty, well, what other apparent imperfections or challenges in life might just be waiting for the right conditions to reveal their own hidden depth and complexity? Something to ponder. For now, definitely go forth and explore these liquid treasures for yourself.
You're here. There's so much to discover.